All right, so I just had my third week of theory class in court reporting school, and I wanted to touch on a few things. I understand that I'm still a beginner. I understand that there's still a lot for me to learn. However, I have had a little bit of experience learning steno before starting school. So my perspective comes from a place of partly curiosity, uh, definitely goodwill, and a bit of frustration. So, what I want to emphasize to any brand new student, and again, I'm not trying to sound like a know it all expert or anything, I'm just trying to offer advice based on the ability that I've built so far. What I would emphasize is to not listen to your teachers if they tell you that you should not be speed building with the material that you've learned so far. I would tell you to not listen to your teachers if they tell you to not start doing basic phrasing with the material that you've learned so far. What that means, phrasing in steno means to basically write multiple words in one stroke. That is what phrasing is. So for example, the word to Anyway, for example, the word to is written with TO on the left side of the board, initial TO. The word the is written with what's called the final T, or the T on the right side of the board. And if you pull up a graphic, you can find that stuff. To write to the, all you would do is you would strike TO, initial TO, and final T at the same time, and that would come up. You would write to the. So it's a faster way of writing the same combination of words. For example, bite or by thee. I get it confused as bite sometimes, but in the theory that I'm learning, by is PWAOEU. That is by, and thee, of course, is final T. So by thee, I can't write it as bite because I'm pretty sure that bite is going to be PWAOEUT. So what I do is I add an asterisk. I write by as by thee. I'm going to from now on write by thee as PWAO asterisk EUT. So that's going to be my by thee. And the reason why phrasing is important is because you're writing a common combination of words that you're going to encounter routinely. You're making that easier so that whenever you hear it, because people are going to be speaking faster than you can write, you're going to have to wait on people to say words. I'm sure once you get good enough, you can, as soon as someone says a word, it just comes out. I'm sure once you get that good, once the skill's developed enough, it gets to that point, and maybe even you start to even think ahead of what people say based on patterns that you've heard before. So if someone says a sentence that you've heard thousands of times before, I'm pretty sure your mind is automatically going to start writing what they're going to say. I'm pretty sure that's how advanced you get. Of course, I'm not sure, but I'm just estimating. I'm guessing. But so phrasing is very, very, it's vital to build your success in steno, and it's vital to do it as early as you can conceptualize it, as you can understand it, and as you can implement it in order to build a solid foundation that will help you as you continue to learn more and more advanced concepts. In class, because I have a little bit of experience, I already start doing that stuff. But what I did is I kind of tested my instructor. I asked, should we start learning basic phrasing? And she brought it up, by the way. As the class was going on, she brought up the concept of phrasing, so I didn't even bring it up. But she said, oh, well, we haven't gone over this yet, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you what it is basically, and you're going to learn it in theory too. She said phrasing was something that we're going to learn in theory too. In my opinion, that's something that should be taught in theory one. Especially, anyway. So what I asked, I said, should we start learning basic phrasing with the material we've learned so far? I didn't ask should we start learning all these events. No, I said should we in your opinion should we start learning basic phrasing? I said in your opinion as students, should we start learning basic phrasing with the material we've learned so far? So basic things. Okay? Of thee. For example, I have of thee as OFT. That's of thee. It's a common thing, the common combination of words that people are going to say thousands and thousands and thousands of times. So for me, that's of thee. I may have to make that an asterisk depending on what if there's a word that's oft or if there's a brief that's oft. I may have to change it. I don't know. But to get used to the mental processing of what phrasing is and doing it regularly as you're learning, I think that's a huge benefit for a student. It makes you faster. I'm guessing it's going to make me faster quicker. I don't see a reason to argue otherwise. And she said to my question, she said, no. She said that she said that students should not be trying to implement basic phrasing until you start learning it in theory too. I was mind blown. What? You're telling me that a student you're telling me that with the basic information that we've learned so far, you're telling me that a student should not be encouraged to learn taught, TOT for to thee. You're saying that a student should not be implementing is thee, initial S, final T. That's a simple phrase. That's not complicated. You're telling me that students should not be training their brains from this early stage to start implementing something they're going to routinely use in their court reporting career. I don't care about being a court reporter, to be honest with you. I'm more on the captioning side. I find that much more engaging, as well as being an asset to the deaf. That's really, I think that'd be like the pinnacle of where I could kind of develop my skill if I was able to be a captioner. Or provide services for the deaf to help them out. That'd be really, really cool. I think I feel like a superhero if I was able to do that. But that was really disturbing to me. It felt like, and again, this is just conjecture, but it felt like she was, in the tone of her voice, it was like she was afraid of students advancing farther than what she wanted them to be. Not that she didn't think they could handle it, or maybe she could, and that's even scarier, I think, to think that grown adults cannot handle such simple concepts. But it sounded like she was afraid of students getting too advanced. It was the tone of her voice, the way that she said it. I mean, I could be wrong, and I think that's something in academia. I've never gone to college, so that's something that I'm a bit ignorant in. But I'd imagine that in academia, there's probably a lot of old, crotchety, kind of stubborn professors and teachers who want students to learn something a specific way. There's no other way. You learn it this way. No kind of curiosity or ingenuity or creativity or desire to go against the status quo or break the mold. You have to do things the way that I say, or else you're bad, or else you're punished. I think that's a dangerous way to try to teach anybody anything. Especially when you're talking about such a such an intensive skill like learning machine stenography. It is not easy. I looked up the dropout rate for machine stenography schools. It's over 80. If it's over, it's by a slight margin, but it's around 80%. The dropout rate for students in court reporting school. Most people do not pass. And I started thinking to myself, I said, this such a simple, what feels to me almost heinous way to almost keep students slow. That could be a part of the problem. Why there's such a high failure rate in court reporting school, because you have a teacher that's telling a man and other women and men in their class that they should not be doing something with the basic material they've already learned that is going to pay dividends in the future. That honestly, it was kind of, maybe evil is an exaggeration. Maybe I'm doing the most, right? When it comes to the way that it made me feel, but I was honestly taken aback. And then what happened at the end of the class, there was a we did some simple dictation. It felt like 10 words a minute. It felt so slow to me. And that's because I've already spent a little bit of time learning lapwing theory, but also because while I was towards, I would say, the last 2 to 3 months while I was learning lapwing theory, and of course as I'm learning the material in this new theory, I'm practicing with a metronome. So I constantly, I don't write at 10 words per minute, 20 words per minute, 30 words per minute anymore. I'm writing always, you know, at 40 words per minute and beyond, between 40 and 50. That's really what I'm practicing at now. My goal is to, once that gets easy, I'm going to start practicing at 60 and then 70 and et cetera, et cetera. Because I think that building speed, it just makes sense to do your best to get comfortable with being uncomfortable while you're learning how to be proficient at this skill, which means to constantly challenge your ability to write faster and faster. You shouldn't be, in my opinion, as a student learning anything, you shouldn't be content with just grasping the concept that you're trying to learn. Once you've learned a concept, once you become competent at something that you've learned, you should start to try to challenge yourself to make it more difficult so that you can, not drastically, but incrementally, so that you slowly get more and more advanced at that basic thing. For example, if you're learning how to box and your coach teaches you the mechanics of the jab and you learn the jab, great. You can throw the jab mechanically correct and your arm doesn't get tired. You can throw it one time perfectly. Fantastic. Now do it 5 times. Okay, I'm going to throw it perfectly. I'm not going to get lazy. I'm not going to let my hand dip below my chin when I bring my hand back. I'm going to throw it mechanically correct. No telegraphing. I'm going to throw it straight from my shoulder. It's going to go in a straight line and come back in a straight line. It's going to hit the same place on the bag every single time. I'm going to do it 5 times in a row. I can do that. Cool. Now do it 20 times in a row. Now I'm going to do it 20 times in a row. Eventually it gets to the point where you can throw that same perfect mechanical jab for an entire 3-minute span. And you spend an entire round on the bag throwing that mechanical jab, throwing it perfectly. And but you see, you graduate from learning the concept to implementing it consistently, then implementing it in a long period of time, and then evolving that concept into things that you could use to play off the jab. So there's a process. I think in any skill, when you're learning anything, you go through that progressive manner of evolution. You learning anything. Core reporting skill, learning machine sonography is no different. And I think building speed, even in a very meager kind of marginal way, I think building speed is a key part of making sure that you learn the skill and is not only an efficient manner as possible, but in as rewarding and as fast a manner as possible. Of course, fast is subjective. Some people will learn something some people will get comfortable with a brief in 1 week. Some people might take 3 months to get comfortable with that same brief. Speed is subjective, but the learning process, I think students should be encouraged to challenge themselves during the learning process in a bite-sized manner, right? In a manner that's not going to completely discourage them, but in a way that can accelerate their progress. Anyway, we did this dictation. It felt like 10 words per minute. And at the end of the dictation was easy for me, obviously. But at the end of the dictation, one of the students asked, was I supposed to keep up with that? Huh? And I'd imagine, the thing is, often, and I remember this from high school, Usually when someone asks a question that makes you flabbergasted, right? Because to you, the answer is easy, or the concept is easy, or the execution that they're asking about is easy. If one person is asking that question, multiple other people are wondering the same thing. They just didn't have the balls to ask the question themselves, either because they were too embarrassed or whatever. So he was not the only person to wonder that question. I guarantee you. Was I supposed to keep up with that? At 10 words per minute, probably less than that. It was probably less than 10 words per minute. It probably wasn't even 10 words per minute. I, the idea when teaching anyone anything is to do your best to get them as excellent as possible. I am a bit disappointed, and maybe I'm making a big deal out of this. Maybe this isn't quite as monumental an issue in my mind as it is to others. But my advice at this point, this early point, to any court reporting student who is going to start, or you're thinking about becoming a court reporting student, my advice is to, and I'm guessing a lot of court reporting students go through the A to Z course. I think it's hosted by NCRA, the National Court Reporters Association. I'm pretty sure it is. Go through that course before you start court reporting school. I think most people do. Start learning lapwing theory. That is my advice. If you can get to chapter 12 of lapwing theory and not be perfect at it, but understand the basic concepts, you're going to have a leg up when you get to court reporting school. And the thing is, here's another piece of advice I would give to anybody who's considering being court reporting school, or who is who just started court reporting school, or you're about to just start. Start speed building with the material that you have. Do not listen to your instructor when they tell you that you shouldn't be speed building, you shouldn't be phrasing. You should be looking for every opportunity to make your writing as efficient and as fast as it could be given your relative skill set at all times. Okay? Obviously, if you have no experience whatsoever, if you're not like me and you've only done the A to Z course and you struggled through that, right? Because getting introduced to steno before you go to court reporting school doesn't mean that you're going to be doesn't mean that you're going to be comfortable with steno when you start court reporting school. It just means that you've already been shown the beast. You've already had a glimpse into the cave of horrors and have seen you've seen the potential of the beast that you're going to attempt to slay. That's all that means. It doesn't mean that you're confident you can slay the beast. It just means that you've seen it. And maybe your knees have buckled a few times. Maybe you started sweating. Maybe a few of your cohorts had turned around and screamed bloody murder and ran back home. Regardless, it is up to you to do your best, because from what I've experienced so far at this early stage, teachers aren't going to. Teachers are not going to encourage you to be curious, to be creative with your practice methods, with looking for ways to make your writing more efficient. And to a point, I will concede that it is understandable, because steno is hard. And a lot of beginning students, especially if they have no experience learning steno before, or they have not, it is daunting. Even the basic concepts. I can remember words like rat, rot, sat, caught, rap, sod. Those words, Taz, those words at first, to me, I can remember how impossible it felt to type those words. It felt damn near impossible. I remember telling myself, it's funny, man, it's crazy. I remember telling myself, how the heck am I going to be able to write this stuff at even 30 words per minute? How the heck am I going to ever be able to do this? I remember how impossible it seemed, how monumental a task it felt to try to write the word, to try to go from sap to tot to rock. Well, not rock, because BG is an advanced concept, but rob, right? I remember how difficult it was to go through that. Now, obviously, that doesn't intimidate me whatsoever. Now that, it's fine. I can do that at 50 words per minute, 60 words per minute, no big deal. Obviously, again, that's not expert status or anything, but my point is that my point is that you should be looking out for yourself as a student. Okay? Make do challenge yourself from the beginning to build speed. Challenge yourself from the beginning to look for opportunities to implement basic phrasing and practice that. It's in your best interest because from what I've experienced at this early stage, I know I'm just a fledgling, I'm just a baby, but I'm telling you, it doesn't seem that teachers are going to do it. They're old, they're stubborn, they are stuck in their ways, and it's their way or the highway. And they're not gonna appreciate it if you recommend or you ask, how can I make this learning process accelerated and more efficient for me? They're not gonna like that because they're only thinking about they're very simple-minded is not the right word, but they're not. It's funny because in a way I've seen this happen, and maybe this is not the teacher that I have. I'm not trying to talk down to her or talk bad about her or whatever, but I've seen people even in managerial positions in various jobs, they get so used to following a routine that they stop thinking for themselves. Even when teaching others, they stop using their creativity. They're stuck in this ironclad way of teaching others this process, and they ignore any idea, or they disregard, and that's even worse, any idea that would make the learning process more efficient or the job more efficient, faster, easier to do. I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen that mindset in plenty of people as well. Do not be that person. Don't be that person. Always think of ways in which you can make the learning process and practicing and building speed and phrasing easier on you. Learn to start looking at steno as a way to make it more efficient.